Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, author of Life After Breath and the Wisdoms Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as sharing your comments in the comments section to help grow the channel. Today's guest is a special return guest. It's none other than Kellee White and Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri. Kellee and Shirley are going to be discussing their crossover work together that merges spirituality and psychology, as well as their incredible podcast that's coming out and their own personal journeys, as well as insights of the intersectionality of soul therapy or soul psychology and psychology itself. So, without further ado, we bring on Kellee and Dr. Shirley here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder to return guest Kellee White and Dr. Shirley. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to see you again, Jacob.
Oh man, I'm buzzing. I'm getting the chills because I know, Kellee, we had a great time when you came on my podcast. I mean, how long ago was that? That was
It's about a
must have been
year
this
ago.
around this year,
Yeah.
and I know you introduced me to a long-term friend and colleague in Dr. Shirley, and you guys have a long history together.
You.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your history? Because the way that you met to me is fascinating, and then we could get a little bit of the juicy stuff that you're doing right now because it's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Sure,
Well,
why
Kel,
don't
do you
you
wanna
No, you take it.
Well, it was just a fascinating journey how I met your mom, how I met Kelly's mom to begin with. As a psychologist, you need 3,000 hours to work 3,000 hours under somebody else's license as part of your training.
And I should say that Shirley comes from UCLA.
Yeah.
She's got a
Mhm.
PhD from UCLA.
Yeah. So one day, something told me, literally, something told me I had to drive to Beverly Hills because I lived about 20 minutes away. And I drove there. I landed on the street, found parking, which is very rare in the small streets in Beverly Hills, looked at a building and thought, oh, that's a great building. Went in there, pushed the third floor. Now, again, I have no idea why I'm doing this. I'm just going with,
Mhm.
and I walk in to Kelly's mom's office. And she happens to be in between patients, which is very, very rare too. And I said, hi, I'm going to UCLA and I need 1,500 hours to complete my license. And would you take me on? They call it as a psych assistant. And she said, I'll never forget, "Oh, honey, I'm not taking on any new psych assistants." And literally something hit me in the back of the head and out
Mm.
popped the words, "But I'm trained in hypnosis." And she goes, "Oh, honey, I need a good hypnotist, but I don't know you. Let's have lunch."
Mm.
Then we realized we had a few people in common. I was seeing the boyfriend of someone that she was seeing was a girlfriend, and then all of a sudden, Kelly comes into the picture.
I mean,
So
just to
you
set the
take
top
over on that
too,
story.
my mom had been a psychologist in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, for 45 years. In fact, she worked up till 2 days before she died, and for her to take on any psych assistants, she was not gonna do that. I mean, just to tell you how rare this was, she worked so hard. She was known as the shrink to the stars. She worked her ass off, loved what she did, and for her to have a break in there, this was definitely spirit's way of intervening, because for her to have a break, that she would be opening the door and actually speaking to somebody and allowing them into her inner circle would just never have happened. It
Yeah,
just This was a planned event on the other side.
it
And then
really was.
it was a total planned event, and then you and my mom, you were as close to her as any of us. You were extremely close to her.
I'll never forget, I'd come over at 5, we'd have our glass of Chardonnay,
Yep.
and we'd talk about different people we had seen, and I would ask her, "I'm seeing this person," and that's what this whole thing is about when you work under someone else's license, is you consult your cases with them, and
Mhm.
they kind of guide you on what you're doing correctly, what you might try, that kind of thing, and it was just, I mean,
She
I'll never
adored you, she loved you,
oh,
and she knew how smart you are, and just for the record, Shirley is a genius. She's really, really
oh,
smart.
didn't go that
And
Oh,
far, but
and
thank
then
you.
what happened, as I've told you before, Jacob, but I'll just reiterate this, I had a traumatic brain injury in the year 2000, and as a result of the traumatic brain injury, I started seeing dead people, and I started having a spiritual awareness and a whole situation that happened to me, and my mom, fortunately, knew what to do. in the best of her abilities as a psychologist, she knew I hadn't lost my mind. She knew I was going through some sort of a spiritual awakening, and she really guided me through that experience and helped me tremendously. And then surely you got to experience me during that awakening period.
Yeah. Yeah, because then Kelly needed her 3,000
Well,
hours.
and then what happened is I decided to go back to grad school.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mhm.
After I had literally gone through this transformation, this kundalini experience, if you will, and then I realized it was probably good for me to go to grad school. My mom and I had talked about it,
Mm.
and during grad school, I too needed my 3,000 hours, and so Shirley became my, I became her not psych assistant, it was her intern, because in
Yes.
psychotherapy, we call it intern. So
Yeah.
at that time, I think it's called something different now, but anyway, I was your intern.
Yeah. So the lovely thing is I was able to pay it forward and, um, Kelly cracked my right brain right open because it's,
You
you know,
were open to it though, Shirley. That
I
was the
well,
amazing thing, and I stress that she came from UCLA because that's a strong left brain background.
yeah, and my
Mhm.
dad's was an engineer. So I was taught to think very logically, but even as a little kid, I always knew what made us us. Like different than the other person. There had to be something more than just the body and then you die and then it goes away. Because then in my logical brain, we'd be more robotic. We'd be more like each other, but everybody has their own essence. And I always knew there's something to that. And
Mhm.
meeting Kelly really just
Cracked it
Well,
out.
opened up oh my goodness. The
oh
stuff
my
that would
god.
happen in the office was
Well, I
just
was really
unreal.
fortunate because my mom and Shirley shared an office suite, and they graciously gave me my own office to use, and I was using it as a medium, and at the same time, also, I was, seeing psychotherapy clients that I would see, and then I had to figure out how to push that together, but you were so great about it, and you understood, and then you'd be fascinated by talk about our consultation.
So fascinating.
"What do you mean, Kelly, that happened?" "Well, here we go." You know?
Right.
Wow. Isn't it amazing how just an innocent thing like, getting supervised for hours and or completing your license and hearing the word no and just, listening to that voice, as you mentioned, in the back of your head
Mhm.
can not only lead you to intern for Kelly's mother, but also developing this incredible decades-long friendship.
Yeah.
And, maybe speak to a little bit about intuition and where that could lead from your own personal and professional experience and how that could really make a ripple effect in the road and path that you're traveling because you guys are living proof of that, following that voice and just how
Yeah.
it's really transformed both of your lives. It's
Well,
almost like that song, Wicked for Good. You come into your lives for a
total,
reason and things just
totally.
Yeah.
blossom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I don't think anybody surely has asked us that question,
Mm-mm.
and I will tell you what, for me, what I wanna talk about with this is I trust Shirley.
Mm.
I trust her.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that she means good for me, and when you're a medium, you have to be around people that you trust,
Mhm.
and trust is an earned situation. So I trust that Shirley understands where I'm going. She may not understand where I'm going, but she knows that I'll land where I need to be without doing harm. And that's the other thing. As a therapist and as a medium, do no harm. Do no harm. I mean,
Mhm.
that is an oath I swear by. And so, Shirley, you've
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
understood. You've allowed the process. You trust me, I think, that along here, we
Absolutely.
built this. I mean, this wasn't I mean, Shirley was very good friends with my younger sister, actually, at
Wow.
some point, right, Shirley? I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Shirley was really close with my mother, and my mother always just loved Shirley and could see how smart she was, and so there was that dynamic there, but you allowed me, Shirley, to be me. You were unabashedly, "Yeah,
Mm.
let's bring Kelly in." Now, my mother did that for me too, and you did this for me. And
Yeah.
that was a bond, Jacob, that there is no
Mm.
doubt in my mind was created from lifetimes ago. And surely I've always said is not from around here. And I don't mean, Earth. I mean, she's definitely, intergalactic because she thinks way outside of a box and is
Mhm.
able to make sense of
Yeah.
things. And
Mm.
so there was something about that trust and that she opened the door for me. When people say, "How do you combine mediumship with spirituality?" It was Shirley that said, I mean, my mom started
Mm.
the process, but it was Shirley that said, "Here we go. I'm not afraid. I mean, you were surely you were completely unafraid, and there were a lot of people that were like, "I don't know, Kelly," like, I got it back and forth, and
Yeah.
I just went with my intuition, which was
Yeah.
I knew I had to be one of the first people to combine these 2. I had to, because you need both. You need the psychology background, I feel, and you need the for me, I need the mediumship
Yeah,
background.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you so much, Kel, for saying that. You're just there was something in you. You're just so grounded. And I used to go and follow along, like like the third wheel when Kelly started studying with James, and I would go for all the trips because I was so
She did.
fascinated with it.
She went everywhere with me.
And I saw her skill. I saw it.
Mhm.
I could. You had it. You have it. And I just knew it. And I always, as I said, I always knew there was something more than just this. I've always
Mhm.
felt that, and I
But
just
not all therapists would go there, and you know that, Jacob, as a therapist
Mm.
yourself, and you're
Yeah,
trying to combine the 2.
yeah, and this was a long time before I'm doing it, and I could just imagine, I'm close I'm friendly with Dr. Raymond Moody, and he when he was coining the term NDE, working in the field of
Totally.
academia, psychiatry, and his
He was one of the
philosophy
first,
background.
really, literally one of the
Yeah,
first,
in
if
the
not the
'70s,
first.
and that came with, an immense amount of pushback. So my question for you, Shirley, is, like, where did you get the strength to just kinda say, "You know what? I learned what I learned at UCLA, it was a great program, but you know what? There's something missing that I've been taught in school, and I'm willing to go out and to visit that and to be
Mhm,
curious with that and explore that and may possibly integrate that." Where did that? Because a lot of people, have it, but they're just afraid to,
mhm.
go forward with it. You
Well,
were able to follow that.
yeah, well, you know what it was, Jacob? I saw the healing that it brought. I saw in the readings when someone would say, especially when it's a child that passes, and Kelly was able to say what they wore, what they said, what happened that nobody else would know, and I would see the parent just
Mm,
the healing that it brought. And that is what our profession is all about. That's the oath I took to help people heal.
mhm,
And so I thought, how can you not incorporate something that can be so healing from someone who is the real deal,
mhm,
and can bring that to people? How can I ignore this? So at
mm,
that point, that's when I thought, okay, yes, I might be shunned by some of my, academic friends, and who gives a shit? I don't care because I see the healing that it
mhm,
brings, and that's the main piece.
and that would have been our agreement, Jacob, from a long time
Mm,
ago.
mhm,
Is the only way I can say it, and then the other piece that Shirley brings in too, that's so important is the work that she's done with Dr. Peter Levine from somatic therapy, and
mhm,
just now when you did that, you went you did that sigh and your body just relaxed,
noted.
Shirley.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did notice it. She's taught me so much about somatic work. So when I'm working with a family who's had deep trauma from
mhm,
loss or deep trauma from somewhat from whatever it happens to be, I'll send them to Shirley
mhm,
or a somatic worker that somebody can help them with that actual release of carrying that kind of trauma. Because when I'm doing a mediumship or I'm doing a spiritual session with somebody, I'm watching for all of that. I'm observing. I want to know where their traumas are, where they're stuck, and then I want to figure out who can help them. Oh, Shirley can.
mm. I love it, there's a story that I always reference on Thanksgiving with, Tony Robbins, and he was, growing up, and I guess the town knew that his family was lower economic at the time, and there was an individual who tried to give the family a turkey for Thanksgiving, and the man tried to drop it off at the house, and, Tony's dad, I guess, like, barricaded the door and didn't want him to come in. He tried again, and, like, he didn't come in, and finally he snuck it in. He said, what's gonna stop you from, like, helping out your family is just your ego, like, doing, and your pride.
Mm.
And I think I'm giving that example because professionally, personally, there's egos. Professionally, there's egos, and I think, that stops us from really helping people out in a fuller way, and it seems like you were able to challenge the professional ego, what you were taught to focus on meeting people where they're at in a very flexible way of, enhancing their needs and uplifting their lives.
We really mean we want everybody to feel as best they can, to
Yeah,
work through their
absolutely.
traumas, to get better so they can make good informed decisions, on
Yeah,
Earth. Earth is
and
hard
heal
enough.
because even when you lose somebody, that is a very traumatic experience.
Mhm.
It can be, certainly, especially if it's shock, if it's unexpected. And, Peter Levine taught me what he always says is, you know, trauma is a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. And that's where I think
Mm,
we come in, where we help from both perspectives. Because the
yep.
spiritual perspective, like I said, I saw it firsthand how healing it is. And then you heal what I say, I heal the human trauma, the trauma that we have as human beings in this lifetime. Um, and both I just are so important and can create I always saw healing as having very different entry points,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
we're
that's
just 2
good.
different entry points of
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to concretize these terms, and maybe we could try, but, how would you say that psychology and spirit, psychology and the soul interwoven together when it comes to understanding who we are? And how may they be at a dichotomy or just like a bit of a schism in terms of how they see ourselves and their bandwidth of understanding of who we are? Like, how would you see the crossover and how they see us, and how would you say us is different? And how also would you say that psychology defines, ourselves or the nature of orientation, how the spirit or the soul looks at reality in its functionality and its purpose?
Well, I think psychology is extremely important because it shows us where we are as a human at this exact moment. Like, where
Mhm,
are we? Are we anxious? Are we depressed? What's going on? Is there a personality disorder here? What's going on? So, to me, it helps, as surely you would say, name it to tame it or name it to understand it or
Yeah.
something. But
Yeah.
then from a spiritual lens,
mhm,
I open up, I can use lots of lenses in my work, but from a spiritual standpoint, I'd like to look at wonder why the soul, as you always say, be curious. I wonder why the soul has taken this on. Let me look. Oh, okay. The soul needs to understand the mother dynamic is this. The mother went through this trauma. Da, 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 da. And I can start to view it of why the soul took incarnation, why the soul is here, what's the purpose of this. So it broadens. It gives me a bigger lens to view things. I think it's the next aspect. I think I think psychology is very important because it's the grounding,
mhm,
but it's then I wanna have a bigger picture of it. So,
mhm,
Shirley, is that where are you with that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I see it as, as you always said, and James, we're souls having a human experience. So we have to address both. We can't just address the soul part and our spiritual world
Right, right,
and ignore our humanness.
right,
And we can't just address the humanness because then we're missing a huge piece.
right,
mhm,
So they're
we
both
talk about bypassing a lot. You can't just bypass the psychology of it. You just
mhm,
can't. You just
right.
can't
mhm.
go off in woo-woo land. You just
Yeah.
can't. I mean, you have to be really grounded. I mean,
Mm,
grounded. I practice being grounded every day. I think it's everything is to be grounded,
yeah.
and also looking at the bigger picture of everything. And that's
Mhm,
what we have a show called Psychology and the Soul, and that's what we bring together. I mean, we do talk a lot about no bypass. You can't have a psychology bypass, I don't think, because people will say, well, why do I, need to work on my trauma? Why, I can read a book and, oh, okay,
mhm.
great. I hope it works for you. But
Yeah.
we offer tools. Shirley has
Mm,
amazing tools in her
Mhm.
toolbox
yeah.
for
Yeah.
helping people get unstuck or work through their healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was kind of like the tipping point where you were like, "Hey, we gotta get this together, it's needed." Like, what was going on, that you noticed that just said, like, "We need to
Mm.
marry these 2 together, and we need to find," 'cause I think you guys were doing this a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be off,
Yep.
but this say this is all new. So what said, "Alright, this moment right here, right now, this is the time." What was
Well,
happening?
can I say this, Shirley? Because it was kind of funny. Shirley and I started this in 2013. Shirley had been doing a radio show. She'd been doing podcasts since 2010, Cheryl?
Was
2009?
it? Wow.
Oh, it was way back. And she would always say it was in Hollywood at one of the studios, and she'd say,
Yeah.
"Kelly, you've gotta be on. I want you to be on as my guest." I was in grad school, and I did not wanna open up about first of all, I was in grad school, let me just repeat that. I did not wanna get any of the teachers or anybody to find out
Mhm.
who I really was at that time. I didn't feel safe doing
Yeah.
that, and I don't
Yeah.
think it was safe to do it, to be honest,
Mhm.
at that time.
Yeah.
So, Shirley would say, "Come on, can you be on my show?" And then I was like, "I am don't talk publicly. This is not my forte." And then you'd say to me, "Oh, you can do it. You can do it." And then, so the next thing I know, after I graduated, I was like, "All right, Shirley, we'll do it." And Shirley and I had a show. What was it called? I forgot what it was called, Shirley.
Both sides now.
Both Sides Now, and be oh, then okay, so Both Sides Now.
Mhm.
So we
Shouts out to, Joni Mitchell, right? So
Right.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So we would talk about psychology, and then I'd talk about whatever it was from the spiritual lens. And then after about 5 or 6 years, Cheryl, it was like right around 2020 or 2019, you didn't wanna do it. You had a lot to do. You didn't
Yeah,
wanna
yeah,
do
I
it.
was going through.
And and at that exact time, James said to me, James Van Prague said, "Can I do the show with you?" And I said, "Sure, what do you wanna call it?" And he said, "How about Both Sides Now and Beyond?" Because he had a show called Beyond. So then James and I did it, and then lately, it was recently that James said, he's just wanted to take a break on a lot of things and change his life in a different area. And so, Shirley said, I'd like to do the show now." And, so to your question, frankly, I think this is needed more than ever now, given the way that's everything that's going on in the world right now. And I think it was divine timing to start this back up with Shirley.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I was having a conversation with someone, and I was saying there's just so much going on in this world right now, and the person turned to me and reminds me of the work that you're doing. He goes, "Well, Jacob, that's true, but there's so many tools right now. There's so many resources, and that's a beautiful thing."
yeah,
Could you share with us maybe some of the tools that you guys maybe lean into in your personal, professional practices, that you feel could be helpful for a lot of people who are feeling uncertainty or having this collectivized trauma or feeling just depressed, depleted? And maybe what are some of the patterns that people are experiencing that lead to
yeah,
those things? And
yeah,
where could the shift be that people could really take their lives into different gears, would you say?
yeah. Well, it's so difficult because, it can be we're experiencing a lot of anxiety and not, um and feeling like we don't have much control over it. And that can become really, really difficult. And so it's little things that will feel more like band-aids because they're not gonna fix the problem. The problem is out there. But little things that help with anxiety. What helps me feel a little less anxious? Certainly staying in communication, in contact with people,
Mm,
because we can feel very isolated when we're going through something, even if everybody else is going through a similar thing. And so staying in connection is really important, but doing little things that nurture the soul and noticing how that feels, always taking it into the body and noticing, oh, my chest feels a little less tight or my stomach feels a little less cramped. Those small little bits can help.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. The little things are the big things in many ways. Yeah.
Well,
How about yeah.
especially since we're in a constant barrage, the little things are really important. And for me, from the beginning, from the very beginning, when I had my traumatic brain injury, I went into deep meditation for the very beginning. And people will say, "Well, why do you meditate?" Or "How is it important?" Or "Why is it important?" And I will tell you why it's important. It slows the brain waves down enough that then you can make a good decision or a good choice. And so slowing those brain waves down and really making a practice. When I started meditating, I was following, it's a funny ass thing to say, but I was following a guru who taught me meditation. She was good at that. Um, but what was important about that is we would have to meditate, whether it was in downtown New York, like in the city, in the heart of the city, like literally centering yourself.
Mm,
And I used to think, isn't it easier to go into a cave or go into some,
right.
land where it's
Right.
quiet? And yeah, anybody can do that. That's like a no-brainer. But where it's really plays out
Mhm.
is now I understand the importance of being able to ground myself in a deep meditation, no matter where I was, no matter
Mhm.
what was going on in the world.
Mm.
So what you're saying is Frank Sinatra was right. If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, he was
Yeah.
so right, Shirley. So super
Um,
right.
yeah, yeah. Maybe that's why I'm living here. Who knows? But
I
Yeah,
think that
you know,
yeah,
everybody, wherever we are, or if you're a light worker, you're supposed to bring light to that. So, Jacob, yeah, I would agree with that. And as you know, you're in Long Island, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes, I'm not, like, exactly in the city, it's a very much suburban, like, I
right,
live right on the well, not Jesus, but next to the water, so
right. What's so great about that is there are a lot of it's a very spiritual area, there are a lot of mediums that are in that area.
Oh my god, and I do think, water, perhaps is a big psychic amplifier.
Totally,
So,
yeah.
yeah, we've had a lot of anywhere from John Edward to George Anderson to Teresa Caputo,
Yeah.
my good friend Jeffrey Wands is another grew up in the Queens area, so we have a lot of mediums here on the East Coast, and obviously
Wow.
James from Bayside, so,
Yeah.
you know Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, no, I love that you guys are giving tools, and then I also noticed you mentioned a little bit about somatic therapy. For people who aren't, as, nuanced or understand somatic, certainly I see it as, like, this next wave of therapy that's really taking hold.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about somatic therapy and maybe where talk therapy is good, but it hits a certain wall, and how perhaps these other avenues could go to the source of what you're going through in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something that I discovered in 2008, and then
2008, yeah.
yeah, because it made sense in my mind, I went and I took every possible training conference course that I could
Mhm,
take because it describes the neurobiology of how we retain trauma.
mhm,
Trauma isn't so much in the event that happened, is how the body stores it. It's what happens in the body, and it stays in the body, and so that's where talk therapy has its limitations because it's very important to understand where something came from, but then what do you do with it? You know,
mhm,
the trauma is stored in the body. It's that fight or flight impulse that shows up anytime something happens and our nervous system gets overwhelmed. So it could be anything.
mhm,
And that fight or flight, and if we can't fight back or run away, and certainly as kids, we can't,
mhm,
that impulse, that fight or flight gets stuck in the body. And
mm,
so it's like living on, it's like living with your engine revving, but nowhere to go.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and
mm,
so somatic, it took me a long time to somatic is just a fancy word for body. So
mhm,
it's really therapy that works with the body to release trauma.
mhm, yeah,
And so as a somatic therapist, I'm looking at the body. It's not so much what you're saying, but I'm noticing what
mm,
happens in your body. So sometimes people are walking around like this and don't realize it.
mhm,
And, you know, in cases like of anxiety, to very consciously
mhm.
bring the shoulders down.
Ah,
There's a tool that's very easy. It's called grounding, noticing your feet on the ground.
mhm.
All of a
Yeah,
sudden that connects you to your body because we don't realize we're operating from our mind a lot of the time and we're not connected. When
yeah.
I first started this work, I realized I was a head and a body that followed along that weren't connected.
We have all these other things, yeah, and even grief too.
Yeah.
Maybe you could speak to how grief in somatic therapy works, and I know a lot of people listening may be going through acute grief or traumatic grief, and maybe some of the symptoms that they're having, physically, and how that might not be something, just strictly happening physically, but something that's occurring somatically, and in conjunction with grief.
Mhm, mhm, yeah. Well, grief, you always ask, "What am I noticing in the body?" Grief can feel very, very heavy,
Mhm,
you know? And so it's a lot of the work is learning how to sit with uncomfortable feelings.
mhm.
It's hard, but
Yeah.
it is the most helpful gift that you can give yourself and that you can teach others to do is how to
Mhm,
sit with uncomfortable feelings and grounding, putting something heavy around you. I have in my office these pillows that this wonderful therapist designed that are full of flaxseed. And so we warm them up in the microwave and I put them all around. And so when someone is going through a difficult emotion, grief, and you feel these pillows on you,
mhm,
it just helps to feel something on you. This is a really nice also
mhm,
kind of somatic, I'll
mhm,
call it tool to use when you're really feeling the depth of the grief.
mhm,
To put one hand, you can put both hands on shoulders or one hand under
mhm,
and just hold yourself as you're going through it.
mhm,
That can be helpful because it's not about not feeling. The feelings are going to be there and they're very difficult to feel, but it's about feeling supported through that.
Shirley,
mm.
would the weighted blanket help with grief?
Weighted blankets help really well too. And they
Mhm.
also help with anxiety because anxiety, we feel like we're gonna, you know, and so when we have a weight on us, it helps us feel our body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Temperature changes, I think, too, like, if people can hold ice cubes, let's just say, take a cold shower, hot shower. New York, we had a freezing winter, that's good too, because in grief, I think the body's like, "Da, da, 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 da," and it needs to, like, just kinda
Yeah.
shift it up and change
Mhm.
physiology
Mhm.
a
Right.
lot, so that's
Right.
yeah, that's very important for people.
Yeah.
These are the
Yeah.
practical grounding things, yeah.
Yeah, and these are tools that are gonna help. I call them Band-Aid, but very important, you know? So, I encourage people not to think, "Well, the grief came back or I feel it again, so that didn't work." Oh, no, it worked. In that moment, it shifted, the your brain. And in that moment, if you got some relief from the grief or the anxiety, that is still just as real as now this next moment where you're feeling it again.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I know you mentioned that you and I certainly noticed this. I'm just curious, and I'm sure there's nuanced and subjective elements to this, but you mentioned that people have a hard time sitting through or with pain.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering for you, do you theorize or maybe you as well, Kelly, as well, what's your kind of intuitive or psychological analysis on why people have such a hard time being present or sitting with pain? I'm sure there's a lot of variance to this, but why particularly now, maybe do you think people have a hard time with that? Now, as I notice, a lot of people really have a hard time
Yeah.
with that.
Well, because it sucks to feel it, to sit in it, and as kids, parents our parents at least didn't know how to navigate that. They're, "No, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, you'll be fine," instead of, "Ugh, that must
Mhm,
hurt so much," and to
mhm,
sit with a child who's going through a difficult feeling. It was taken away real quick, "Oh," "look at this instead," and so we just didn't learn.
Yeah. I think now, Jacob, I think that pain, we're on earth at this time for a specific reason. I mean, it really is to work through whatever it is. And so pain could be a block for us moving forward. Why is that helping us to be blocked in pain right now? And then to work on it because the energy is set right now on earth to help us with more tools than we have ever had, with more communications, with more ways to heal. Then why wouldn't people want to take this time to heal? Well, I'll tell you, some people will and some people won't. Some people
mm,
will stay in the pain, the ego keeps in there. They'll stay in the pain and the suffering, and they'll have another lifetime, and they'll come back, and they'll do, da, 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 da. But what's important about this lifetime is to have the awareness to make different choices, and that's why I talk about meditation, slowing your brain, making a different choice, getting help for trauma, getting help for the physical pain. We're gonna see a lot of people working through karmas of lifetimes, that are, having a gallbladder out, having a heart, situation, having a this, having a that, having a all kinds of situations that are coming up for people right now
yeah,
to
yeah,
work on, to release.
yeah, no, I love that, and, I'm just wondering too, because I don't know about you, but I sit with my clients and ask them, "What do you want?"
Well,
And they always say to be happy, and I'm wondering, where was that rooted in? That happiness is a permanent thing or something satiated and
they
lasting?
didn't
Where
reach
does that
time
originate?
points on Earth. Clearly, that's
Yeah.
we come to Earth, yeah, we will experience joy and sadness and grief and good and bad and all kinds of things. I
Mhm.
mean, when we sign up here, we sign up for, like, the big ticket things. Here
Yeah.
we go. I mean, people
Yeah.
will say to me, "Jacob, I'll never forget this." In the beginning of in 2019, when I saw all of this stuff coming down, I was on a James and I did a radio show, and I said, he said to me, "What do you wanna talk about?" I said, "You tell me." He said, "Well, let's do the astrology for 2020." So I started looking into it, and then I said, "Oh god, James, it's gonna be very bad. It's gonna be very, very bad. Very bad." And I sounded like a friggin' nut job because I kept saying, "No, it's the whole world is gonna change. Everything's gonna change." And then, of course, we had
Mm,
COVID and all of this happened. But then people would say this to me, "Well, when's it gonna get better? Is it gonna get better soon? Kelly, you mean it's just gonna be grief, right?" And I would go, "Are you, like,
yeah.
right in the head?
Mhm, mhm.
No, it's gonna
Yeah.
be lifetimes we've got situations coming up here." And
Mhm,
so but this period of time is designed for us to do our work. So does joy fit into that? Yeah, you can have joy, absolutely.
yeah.
You can have joy, and you can have joy through all kinds of situations.
Mm,
But it's more than just joy on earth. We experience all kinds of things. That's the school. of Earth. Earth school is the hardest. You'll get your PhD one way or another on Earth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and there was this movement, I think, that went for a while about feeling joy. That it's impossible to feel joy all the time. In fact, it sets you up to fail because you can't. You know, it's noticing moments of joy. We have a tendency, the brain has a negativity bias, so it's going to remember all the negative stuff because that's how the species survived. I needed to know that that was the cave that has the bears in it that killed my friend. Who cares about the happy stuff? That's not gonna
Mhm.
save my life. This is going to, and so that got stuck, and it's a very real,
Mhm.
phenomenon that we call negativity bias. So the key is be able to notice moments of joy, notice moments of happiness, anchor it in the body. What does that feel like? This great thing just happened. What does it feel like? And we don't realize how we sometimes just let it go by and we don't sit
Mhm.
with it. Sit in moments of accomplishments to see what that feels like. So then you start to balance your brain out between that negativity bias, but I can also sit in joy. I can also sit in contentment, sit in happiness.
Mhm.
But the idea of being in joy all the time is silly.
Yeah. Reminds me of that Wayne Dyer quote that says, like, "Once things work out, then I'll find peace," and instead he said, "Once I find peace, then things will work themselves out." So once you choose an
Exactly.
intentional and have your attention towards your intention, towards the energy of joy or gratitude, or not
Yeah.
waiting for this outside to create an in, but rather this insight to influence your outer world or outer experiences, that could be that great shift. And I'm wondering, there's goals that people have, and I know you mentioned joy and happiness. Should growth or meaning, would you say that should overtake people's
It's everything.
kinda
Growth
yeah.
and meaning is everything. My mother was a leading existentialist. She was a theistic existentialist, and it was always about making meaning in life. So I grew up as a daughter of an existentialist. When I went to grad school, literally my education was on existentialism, and
Mhm,
everything is about meaning. Everything is about growth. That's why a soul comes to earth to have these experiences to grow and to make meaning of suffering, to make meaning of everything. I'm constantly making meaning of everything. Um, and it's not just making, lemonade from lemon juice or, whatever they think that saying is. I really do appreciate making meaning and understanding.
mhm.
It was funny today. I had a funny situation. My dog is very sick, and I wanted to contact an animal communicator because as much as this is what I don't work with animals that really, and I
Plus
was
it's
super
hard,
well,
it's your own
it's
pet, the
my own pet, and I
objectivity, you
really had
can't yeah,
trouble.
yeah,
But I'll give you an example of what happened because it's so fascinating. There was a woman that I had used years ago, and I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna find her." I couldn't find her anywhere. Couldn't find this woman, and she was very well known. Could not find her anywhere. I
I
couldn't
needed a
remember.
psychic to find the psychic, yeah.
Yes, and I could not. I did, and I asked James. He goes, "It's funny. I can't remember her name." I said, "But you worked with her once," and he goes, "I know, but I don't remember." We could not remember. Nobody could remember. So I found somebody else that was wonderful that I saw. She was really wonderful and helped me. And the moment I hung up with the woman that helped me, swear to God, I got an email from the woman that I was looking for,
No.
and she said her body had fallen apart and she had moved to Hawaii and all this other stuff. But by then I understood because the
Wow.
person I found was actually better suited for me and really perfect for this and really great. Now, I'll send her people. But it was just a wild experience of how
Wow.
spirit. So if you don't, I had to make meaning of all. I make meaning of everything.
Mhm,
Spirit doesn't fool around with me. It
That's
pretty much goes
amazing.
like this. It puts things in front of me constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with everybody. Everybody spirit does this with.
Yeah.
I'm just really aware of it constantly.
Mm.
yeah. I think everyone it should be mandated that everyone reads Viktor Frankl's book, I really do
Totally.
believe.
Totally.
And, certainly in my community college, we had a whole course just dedicated
Yeah.
to man's search for meaning, and
Yep.
it was so
Right on.
transformative
Mhm.
in my life. But yes, yes, meaning is something that people need a lot more. Like, how do you feel that changes the brain or changes our trajectory when we come from a place of meaning in our lives or gratitude or meaning and stuff like that? Yeah.
Well, it can take us away from the sense of hopelessness, which is really, really, if I'd say virtually
It's
impossible
everything,
to live
Shirley.
with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. When we
Yeah.
feel hopeless, that's, that is that's such a difficult place to be in. And so creating meaning
Mhm.
helps with that sense of hopelessness.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, some people could have the world influence their mind, and some people could have their meaning in their minds influence the worlds that they see. That gives
Mhm.
us that power that Frankel really alluded to when he was in the camps. So that big
Yes.
space of stimuli response and that place in between, and that's a
Mhm.
beautiful place to be in. One
Yeah.
of my final questions, and Kelly is a wonderful subject for this on her personal NDE, but talk a little bit about brain health and how that correlates to spiritual health and mental health, because I'm big on this, but I'm just wondering for the both of you how you understand the brain and maybe some um, ways that people could really tangibilize mental health and spiritual health by understanding, the brain. Is that something that people are overlooking, or and
Yeah.
is there any pro neural behaviors that people should lean into to really enhance their experiences?
Well, Shirley, can I start for just real quickly because
Yeah.
you can cover the brain totally. The way I view the brain, Jacob, right now, currently,
Mhm.
is I view it as an operating system. When I work with somebody, I want to see what operating their system they're working out
Yeah.
of, and I also look at, drugs, alcohol, all of that kind of thing that can influence the brain and then really, bring somebody down a road. And so I view it as are they on the spectrum? Are they intergalactic, and
Mhm.
on the spectrum? Are they an angelic realm soul? I
Mhm.
view the brain that way as an operating system here. So
Mhm.
surely I had to throw that in there.
Oh, that's a great way of viewing it.
An
Absolutely.
operating system. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I like that.
because it really is that everything influences, the brain develops between 0 and 6. And so our experiences during that time really kind of set the stage, set the foundation. It's not about blame.
Mhm,
But who do we hang out with the most? Our caregivers and again, not about blame, but to understand. Everything, our behaviors, our idiosyncrasies, our thoughts, there's always a valid reason for them. That's an important thing to know. Even if it's something that we don't like, which many times is what takes us to therapy, that there's a valid reason. So self-compassion is such an important piece to understand. Oh, I do this for a reason. It's not because there's something wrong with me.
mhm,
And Dr. Peter Levine always also teaches you know, um, our mental health, it's the depression, anxiety, it's physiological. It's not because there's something wrong with us,
mhm,
you know?
mhm,
And that's an important piece to also understand because it takes all the stigma away. Oh, I'm reacting like this for a reason. Well, let me go and figure out what the reason is and get help,
mhm, mhm.
you know?
Yeah, 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 and that's really, I think, where a lot of the psychology and the soul comes in, because when you're
Yes.
able to see yourself as a soul, there's this expanded viewpoint and this sense of forgiveness that you have, where
Right.
there's a degree of pathology involved in psychology, or taking guilt or
Mhm.
responsibility for everything.
Right.
And it's
Right.
almost kinda like that Good Will Hunting scene with Robin Williams that just says, "It's not your fault. It's not your
Oh,
fault." And you're able to, like, let go
incredible
of all
scene.
that. That's and that's really good in terms of trauma work and educating people to let go.
Absolutely, because in that sentence, it's true. We weren't born that way.
Mhm,
Our experiences and many the traumatic experiences caused us to be a certain way, and that can always change. The brain is what we've discovered in the last 20 years. The brain has neuroplasticity. So that means we can teach an old dog new tricks.
mhm,
We can change the brain and the chemistry. It takes a while because you're actually shifting the chemistry of it, but we can do it.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of, I notice this with a lot of my young clients, and they're going through a lot of intense emotions, and they have parents that are able to understand that.
Mm.
They learn self-regulatory skills.
Yes.
Whereas some of the other clients who don't have parents with that bandwidth, they don't know what to do with it, and that leads to a plethora of high risk indicative behaviors.
Right.
And I think what you're
Mm.
illustrating is that it's never too late to learn how to ground
Ab
yourself, how to self-regulate. And I agree with J.K. Rowling at a certain point. It could certainly justify patterns, but there's a point in life where you have to stop blaming, people outside of you, and say, "You know what? It stops with me, and I can make the change."
Absolutely. It's important to understand where it came from. I think that's an important piece, but that's not about blaming or getting stuck there. Well, this experience did this to me. Okay, now I understand that. Now, what can I do to help myself through this? What can I do to heal that? What can I do to change this behavior that seems to get triggered when XYZ happens? Understanding our triggers is an important piece too. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you guys have the podcast, and it's I. Where could people find your platform? You guys are on YouTube and other
YouTube
platforms as well.
and Instagram and Facebook, and it's called Psychology and the Soul. And you can
Yeah,
find us at psychologyandthesoul.com. You can find our show, again on YouTube at Spiritual Medium Kellee White. I
yeah,
have it on that, and I also have it on the Spiritual Medium Kellee White FaceTime, Facebook. I'm getting them wrong. What
yeah,
else?
yeah.
I think
FaceTime,
that's it.
Facebook.
Instagram.
We could do FaceTime on, no, but yeah, and I really encourage my audience to go there because whenever I'm on Instagram, 90% of the time I see Kelly and Shirley, you're doing a live, you're doing so much, to benefit humanity, and it's an undeniable calling, and um I say, like, some people could agonize or they can organize when it comes to everything that's going on, and you're using a lot of that action to the greater goods. That's wonderful to
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and it's and I so admire what both of you do. I really do. It's so like I said, I've seen the healing involved that comes with it. So I just want to acknowledge and validate.
Oh, yeah.
That's wonderful.
And, I don't know if this is too preemptive to discuss, but we were talking a little bit in the show that there's, a project that you guys potentially could be working on together. I don't know, but I know you guys also have other books that you've written as well too. Want to talk about those as well?
Well, I have a book called Cracked Open, and it's about
Mhm.
my spiritual journey of going from a business person, losing everything and becoming spiritual. And Shirley, you have a book, and then we'll talk about our other book.
Yeah. Well, it's when I first learned all this, I thought, oh my God, people need to have this information. And so I didn't choose the title, but the title is Why Can't I Change? How to shift your patterns. And it's about understanding how the brain works. So then we have something tangible to understand then how we can shift things.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And then currently we're writing a book together for the lay person on personality disorders because so many people, don't understand their father who's a narcissist and, their sister who's a borderline or the
Yeah.
sociopath happens to be down the street, whatever it happens to be. So we're going to give real life examples for
yeah,
Yeah.
our latest book that'll be coming out hopefully soon.
yeah. To speak your language, Kelly, a little bit, I know we're in the age of Aquarius information, stuff like that, but I think you guys are giving a lot of, really accurate evidence-based information. And there's a big dichotomy in relationship of information and how we see the world and how we behave. And I love that you guys are really able to get this stuff out there because that could mean quite a shift to how someone
Right.
sees things and how they're able to engage with those family
Yeah.
members,
And
friends.
it's not, a lot of people have this, especially in my field about labeling people. It's not about labeling, it's about understanding. There are reasons why these kind of diagnoses came about because they follow a certain pattern, not completely, you know, and to be able to understand what you're working with then gives you more agency to make choices. Okay, this is what the person is, expressing or behaving or how they're acting. I get to decide whether I want to be around that or not instead of trying to change the person or trying to and again, it's all, it's fluid. So again, not about labeling, but it's about understanding. And
And
that is
and
a big
spiritually, it's about making really good choices and understanding boundaries, self-worth,
yeah.
the kinds of things that your soul would have come in to deal with in this lifetime,
Yeah.
to grow, and to master.
Mm, yeah. And seeing, that person as not just a borderline personality disorder or whatever over their head, but a soul who may be experiencing,
Right.
that for their growth and to see people on the soul level and having
Right.
experiences in their life to maybe teach us or for them to also
Absolutely.
evolve and learn too, right?
Oh, they're our greatest teachers.
That's what Kelly
Great
always says.
teachers.
Yes. They are.
Yeah. The
Painful, but great
the
teacher.
Yeah.
they'll come back at the end of the day and said, "I did a good job, didn't I?"
You know it. You know on the
Right.
other side,
Right.
that's what's gonna
Well,
happen.
it's funny because I've said so many times to many of my patients, we're gonna have to send that person a thank you card.
Right.
Mhm.
Because if it weren't for that experience or if it weren't for that, we wouldn't have, you wouldn't have been able to understand this piece and grow and evolve and heal. Yeah.
Yeah. And that you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a real bedrock of psychology meets the soul, where you're able to see things through such a broader
Yes.
perspective
Yes.
that gives a lot
Yes.
more bandwidth of understanding, forgiveness, compassion, curiosity, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We can have a lot of compassion for someone that's struggling, with, let's just say, borderline personality disorder, and also, care about ourselves and set the boundaries that we need to set for ourselves as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. Well, I know we've said a lot, and whenever your next book comes out or whenever you'd like to, you both are rock stars. Would love to have you come back at
Aw,
any
thank you
time,
so
really,
much, Jacob. Thank
really.
you, Jacob.
But I would
Lovely to meet
say,
you.
oh, you too. And before we depart, is there any, final words or events or just anything? I'll give the floor to both of you. Just any things that are coming to you that you would like to say before we conclude.
I'll just say, everybody take care of themselves. Take care of yourself. You are very important. Your soul matters. Your soul chose to be here at this time. Enjoy the ride and learn a lot and grow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I mean, I really echo that. And self-compassion. Know that everything that you do or think or are, there's a reason for it. So even if it's something that you're not happy with, to have compassion that it came from somewhere,
Mhm.
and then you can then, uh, you know, um, go and get help to figure it out and to shift things that you want to shift.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, please do follow, their beautiful podcast. And where's the best place for people to find both of you? You have, I know we'll include your websites, but Dr. Shirley, your website is
It's drshirley.com. Yeah,
drshirley.com and
yeah.
go there and find
And
out more things there.
yeah, I have an Instagram page, Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri, my last name, very
Mhm.
long and drawn out, and Facebook too.
Facebook too.
Yeah,
And
I'm not very
Kelly,
socially
sure.
media tech.
There you go. KellieWhite.com, KELLEE, white.com.
KellieWhite.com. Give them both a follow on Instagram. Check out their Facebook pages and as well as their beautiful YouTube channel and their awesome podcast as well, Psychology and the Soul. Thank you both for coming on and for the awesome, courageous, and groundbreaking and needed work that you guys are both giving to this time in humanity.
Thank
Thank you so much, Jacob, for having us on.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Well, that was just a wonderful interview. Thank you all for tuning in. I learned so much from my respected guests. It was so good to have Kelly on the channel as well as having Dr. Shirley here for the first time. So, thank you all for tuning in. I know you were able to take in a lot of wonderful and helpful information and really understanding the intersectionality that psychology has as well as spirituality. And thank you for tuning in. And I'll see you here next time in the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder.